Hello there, welcome to Inside the Americas. I'm Catherine Nicholson. Here's what's coming up for you on today's show. Will it be all Caribbean sunshine and smiles for Cuba's tourist industry, or stormy weather as the thawing of relations with the United States brings changes to one of the country's most valuable sectors? We're investigating. Piecing together the portrait of a killer, the family of the man who shot dead 5 servicemen in Chattanooga, Tennessee, say he was a confused young man battling depression, substance abuse, and inner conflict over his religious beliefs. And where are you going on holiday this year? We're checking out the attractions of Martha's Vineyard in the northeast United States, the vacation spot of choice for US presidents down the generations. First, though, this week saw 2 of the continent's longest-standing foes take a new step towards burying the hatchet for good. The US and Cuba both reinstating their embassies on each other's territory at midnight local time Monday morning. Well away from the strictly political side, many American tourists are looking forward to the day when they can get visas to visit Cuba on holiday. The island's tourist industry is one area seen as likely to be revolutionised as relations with Washington warm up. But will that revolution bring benefits or harm to Cuba? Locals aren't yet sure, as Fernand Van Tetz reports.
This beach is probably one of the best preserved in the Caribbean. The fine sand stretches for miles and there is very little hotel construction. We're in Varadero in the north of Cuba. It's a tourist enclave, a beach paradise that none of its visitors want to see ruined by apartment blocks. With Cuba's economy opening up, tourists are worried about the arrival of foreign investors.
If the Americans arrive here, it won't be Cuba anymore. The mentality, everything will change.
Cuba is facing a catch-22 situation. Tourists enjoy the charm of the relatively unspoiled island, but to accommodate their growing number, infrastructure has to be developed. Varadero has a mix of mid-range hotels and luxury resorts. The opening has already exploded room occupancy rates, which now exceed 90%. And the Castro regime wants to attract more tourists.
I think they will keep what they have, and there will be some plus for that as well. So more tourists, so economically it should be better.
And the country needs that. In some places, Havana looks more like a city at war than a fashionable tourist destination. If the island wants to grow, it will have to revolutionize its infrastructure. Many buildings are crumbling. Behind these metal barriers, a German group is building a 5-star hotel, like this one. European parties are well placed to take part in the building bonanza. The French Accor group already owns this property. Thawing relations with the US would allow it to move forward with several construction projects.
Havana is returning to its glory days, especially in the old city. There are close to 60,000 rooms today, and by 2020 we hope to have 85,000.
In the heart of Havana, Cuban heritage is preserved. Today, the emphasis is on restoration of colonial-style buildings. The last 50 years, property transactions, as we know them in the West, were forbidden in Cuba. No one could buy or sell. Instead, there was a system of barter exchange taking place in the street.
Before, we could just have a chat. I would look at the other person's house, they would look at mine, and afterwards we would swap. Apart from the exchange, we were not allowed to sell. Now, with the new law, we can. We can sell.
For now, the sale of property remains marginal, with only about 2,000 transactions a year. But it's a market that's only just starting to take off.
Now, depression, substance abuse and a drink driving charge. Police in Tennessee are trying to piece together a picture of the 24-year-old engineer who shot dead 5 US servicemen in Chattanooga last week. Investigators say they have evidence that Mohammed Yusuf Abdulaziz searched for jihadist propaganda before his rampage. Shirley Sitbon is taking a closer look for us.
Some saw him as a well-integrated man with friends. Others describe an unstable, suicidal person. Mohammed Yusuf Abdulaziz was the 24-year-old son of a Kuwaiti mother and a Palestinian father from Jordan. Born in Kuwait, he immigrated with his family to America in the 1990s. From the outside, he seemed like the typical well-adjusted teenager. Wrestler at the Chattanooga High School, he graduated from Tennessee University with an engineering degree.
I want people to know that he wasn't always like this. He was a completely different person growing up.
Is I don't want to see him painted as just a career terrorist, like that this is what he was, brought up to do, because that's not the case.
Once he graduated, Mohammed Yusuf Abdulaziz, looking for spiritual guidance, multiplied visits at the local mosque. After the attack, his father called the community leader.
And he's very devastated. And he actually apologized for what his son did.
Family and friends say they couldn't imagine the young man would commit such murders, but an anonymous source has a different perspective. According to ABC News, the source told the FBI Abdulaziz had been in depression since childhood. He was also a frequent drug user. In 2013, he was fired from a nuclear facility due to his addiction. The FBI says it found the suspect's diary where he wrote at the time he wanted to kill himself and become a martyr. His depression and drug addiction are the reasons his parents sent him to Jordan for 7 months last year. On April 20, police arrested Mohammed Yusuf Abdulaziz for drunk driving. Ashamed of his addictions, which are banned by Islam, his depression deepened. The investigation also revealed that he had consulted jihadi propaganda online.
A group of soldiers in Mexico are under suspicion of helping to disappear 7 young people in the northern Zacatecas state. Relatives of the 2 women and 5 men have told local media that the group were held by military personnel in a house in the town of Calera on July 7th. Now, according to the victims' families, their bodies were found in a neighbouring town with signs of torture and execution-style bullet wounds to the head 11 days later. The government's National Human Rights Commission is investigating the case. Well, staying in Mexico, we're going to take you inside a state-of-the-art police academy now. It is partly funded by the US and hosts training sessions for officers embroiled in the seemingly never-ending war on drugs. But with accusations of police brutality and corruption continuing to rear their heads in Mexico, can these kind of courses really be enough to restore the force's reputation with locals?
A murder, then a bomb blast, rapidly followed by a Hollywood-like police chase. But the officers in this Mexican town only carry fake assault rifles. This is an everyday routine at the Pueblo Táctico, a fake village built as a training facility partially thanks to US funds. The state-of-the-art facility sharpens tactical skills and crime scene investigation techniques. Here, students learn to detect bodily fluids under UV lights. Such expertise is increasingly important now that Mexico is switching to a new trial system with more strict evidence requirements.
Yes, being in touch with police on the national level makes us realize there are problems, and their problems are basically linked to the application of methods and techniques based on forensic sciences to any type of crime: kidnappings, robberies, rapes, homicides, suicides, any of those.
The U.S. government invested $5 million of the $22 million that went into the facility to strengthen local policing and stem the flow of drugs over the border. But American authorities say it will take a lot more to change the Mexican police corps, with the exposure of one case after another of alleged police brutality. Last month, policemen killed 42 suspects in a shootout, while only losing 1 officer, a figure critics find suspiciously one-sided.
Training, any kind of training, is going to be a long-term endeavor. Simply because we took a group of police officers for 1 week and trained them on something does not mean that they are instantly a professional corps of police who are never going to make mistakes or never going to commit crimes.
The mock crime village could hone officers' skills. Whether this is enough against drug cartels remains to be seen. Meanwhile, the struggle for residents' trusts continues.
Well, just a little change of pace now. It is summer holiday season here in France and for people across the Northern Hemisphere. For the American president, that means a trip to Martha's Vineyard is coming up. Barack Obama, the latest of many US presidents to pick the island off Massachusetts as his summer vacation spot. So, just what's the attraction? Fernand Van Detz gives us a look around.
A sandy beach that stretches as far as the eye can see. This is Martha's Vineyard, a 250-kilometer island off the coast of New England, which gets flooded by visitors every summer. Yet tanning on these pristine beaches comes at a price. The island boasts some of the highest house prices in the United States. Those looking to holiday here need to bring fat wallets. This property owner charges eye-watering prices for his house, private jetty, and pool.
The house is legally 6 bedrooms, and we rent it by the week or by the month, and by the week it's $42,000.
That hefty price tag is partially due to the crowd. The island's history is filled with a who's who of American politics. The Kennedy family had a house here. The Clintons also liked to vacation on the island, and now Barack Obama can be seen at the local golf course or at a diner by the port.
Bonjour.
This couple own the house that the first family call their home when on the island. How much they pay for this 600-square-meter property is a matter of national security.
This is the master bedroom. Barack and Michelle Obama stayed here in this bed.
But that's not the president's favorite room in the house. He prefers the gym.
It's the heaviest dumbbells I have are 30 pounds each, and they brought extras because they were heavier. But he's a beast.
The spacious living room is where the president would receive his close advisors. But a presidential tenant has its quirks. A tent was set up inside the cellar for communications.
So he could come down here at any hour and talk to anyone in the world without fear of being overheard.
It's not a surprise that the first black president is a repeat visitor here. The town of Oak Bluffs has long been an enclave for the African-American elite. The tradition was started by domestic help who knew the island through their employers. Later generations prospered.
Somebody would buy a piece of land and build a house on it, and they passed through their families.
All on Martha's Vineyard bask equally in the last rays of sun, if they can afford it.
Well, that's all the time we have for this edition of Inside the Americas. Thanks very much for being with us. We will be back again next week for all the news from north to south.